Hello, everyone. Well, it's one apiece. No one knows what to expect. Many people thought that England would be 2-0 down by this stage and that the third test, the pink ball day-night test, would be their best chance of snagging a victory on this India tour. But as things stand, well, they go in here in a pretty good position despite losing the last test. They're in a good position series-wise, at least, because there's so much we don't know about this. And joining me, as ever, is the wonderful Bharat Sundaresan, who's also wearing a pink T-shirt. So I'm pretty impressed by that effort here in support of the pink test. Bharat, just your initial thoughts just on the state of the series going into this, because there's certainly a lot that we don't know.
And I don't think we'll know much about it till the time they toss the coin, and maybe the captains will tell us who's playing to start with. And before that, we'll also get to look at the pitch, because we don't know what the pitch is going to be like. Of course, there were pitches floating around a few days out from the test where it looked like a pitch straight out of New Zealand. And I don't mean a pitch straight out of New Zealand cricket ground, but like one of the greens where you see all those sheep on. But we knew that the color would not be retained. The only thing we do know right now is the color of the ball would be pink. And this has some bad karma about it, I must say, for if you are an Indian cricket fan, because this is one of the balls that the Indian team used here in Adelaide to practice with before they were bowled out for 36. So what do you think I should do with this ball? Preserve it?
I'd be very careful about asking for suggestions on that. Just me.
Leave your comments below. Let's see what you come up with.
Look, it is so crazy. I mean, we've had 15, I think, pink ball tests now. That is still such a crazily small sample to make a lot of judgments. So obviously there are the key things that people talk about: the ball seeming more, swinging more, especially at twilight. And there are the problems with adjusting to light. The players have spoken to all of that. It has tended to favour the bowling side as far as batting collapses, and Joe Root's spoken a lot about trying to prevent those batting collapses. As he said, we certainly saw one of those, the most extreme in a way, one of those in Adelaide. But even in the other tests, there have been certain periods of time, that magic hour or that time when things just happen, and they seem to happen really, really quickly. And we spoke before about the pace of tests often in India, where they are a slow burn for the first few days, and then all of a sudden everything happens at once. So it's going to be very fascinating to me to see the pace of this game, and just if it has a completely different rhythm to other games, because we've only got that one game against Bangladesh in India to go from, and I don't really know that we can take too much out of that, can we?
Not really. And the only difference that I can think of, having grown up in India, especially in the western part of the country, is that it's February. So we will see not just an extended period of twilight, but it'll be one of the few pink ball test matches which is played more during the night than at day, or under dark skies rather than under sunny skies, because the game starts at 2:30 India time. So that's 2:30 to 4:30, 5:10 to 7:10. By 7:10, it's generally pretty much pitch dark in that part of the country. So we will see a lot of the pink ball under lights, which is exciting, which is the whole concept of day-night cricket. Because we've seen at times in Australia, especially in Adelaide, you get 45 minutes of play under, and even then it's pitch dark.
Yeah, and in England it's even more the other way, because it stays light so late. So at times in England it felt like that you hardly got any of the time under the dark skies. So bearing all of that in mind, then do you have any thoughts about the team? Because India, you think they're probably the big question. Jasprit Bumrah is back, fit and firing to go. There's talk that Hardik Pandya's been seen bowling the pink ball in the nets. Will they go for a seam, or will someone like Kuldeep Yadav get another go? Well, what do you think they might be thinking about? Or is it just like, I don't know, we'll see what happens at the coin toss?
I mean, see, we've there has been some talk about this pitch being dry, and Rohit Sharma said it's going to turn. But still, I would think India will try to go in with three seamers. It's interesting if Hardik Pandya has been bowling with the pink ball. Uh, will they risk him? I don't know how many overs they think he can bowl. We saw him bowl during that T20, or was it the ODI? Was it the ODI when nobody expected him to bowl, but he kept bowling. He bowled 4 overs and he did wake up sore the next day. So it would be a big challenge considering the series is 1-1. We've seen a lot of pink ball test matches at the start of a series. Most of those 15 have come at the start, but this is interesting, right? Like you said earlier, it's poised perfectly, 1-1. Not many would have thought that would happen, especially after the way India played in Australia. But so it's give or take here. I mean, you don't want to lose this test, and not just because it's a pink ball test and it's 1-1, because we haven't even spoken about the Sardar Patel Stadium, Ahmedabad, the biggest cricket stadium in the whole world. I think I told you off air, the last cricket match to be played there was a journalist match, which I was a part of, when West Zone won the illustrious, the prestigious JK Bose Trophy. The last time they did that, 2015. I didn't bowl or bat. I think I just fielded a couple of balls, but yeah,
It's a
we won
shame
the
you
title.
didn't bowl, because having witnessed your bowling prowess on a number of occasions, it really is something to behold. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to find a way for you at home to see this man bowl, because it really is something incredibly special. I don't know why he doesn't have an IPL deal personally. I think he should. So with all that in mind, then, and what India intend to do, surely with if the ball is going to be swinging more, England must be pretty excited to have James Anderson back on rotation. You'd think he and Jofra Archer would be pretty certain to come back into the side. Ben Stokes is saying that they're licking their lips at the thought of bowling with that pink SG ball. And James Anderson also said that it felt that the pink SG ball felt quite a lot like a Duke's ball. Now, whether it really does or whether he's just trying to, put that in there, but I'm sure he does genuinely feel that. So if for England, what do you think? Do you think they might pile it on and go, right, well, look, our best chance is really if our fast bowlers do well, and if they go with the extra seaming option in a Chris Wokes and leave Dom Bess out?
I think that's exactly what England should do, because I think if you would have asked them before the series started what their best chance was, they would have looked at the pink ball test as being their best chance. Let's not forget that the last time they played a pink ball test away, they were 28 for 9 one day before they somehow escaped to 50 odd or 40 odd. So they didn't do fare too well against the pink ball, but that was New Zealand. So completely different conditions. And England would have looked at this test match as being their best chance, like I said. So they should go in all, with full strength, uh, play to their strengths, which is seam bowling. Yes, the spinners have done well, but Jack Leach has shown the control. The other two, even though Moeen Ali took some wickets, he didn't show enough control, nor did Dom Bess. And in a pink ball test, we've seen the game can slip away in just a matter of 70 or 80 runs. The Adelaide test, Australia 7 for 111, a few catches get dropped, they get to 180, and then of course 36 all out happens. But the margins seem to be finer in a pink ball test. So I think it would be best if England go in with not an all seam attack, but four seamers. And considering Ben Stokes is not bowling too much, Chris Wokes would not be a bad option. And have Jack Leach in there. See, one of my colleagues at CrickBuzz has spoken to the SG company director, and even they are not too sure about how a pink ball would do on a dry pitch, which is what we're expecting to see. They expect the color to go off. And one thing we did notice during that pink ball test at the Eden Gardens is that sighting the ball was not easy. A lot of Bangladeshi batsmen got hit on the head. There were two concussion substitutes. So you can see this, like the seam is not pronounced, but the black thread, the seam is much more visible than what we've noticed with the SG ball. So it's like we spoke about the pitch and the teams. The SG pink ball hasn't been used much. In the past, India have had a few domestic matches, Duleep Trophy matches, but they were played with a pink kookaburra like this one. So everything's up in the air. But if I were England, I would look at this as my best opportunity in a long time to go 2-1 ahead and maybe leave the door open for Australia to make that World Test Championship final.
Oh my goodness. Can you imagine that? That would be the most ridiculous thing. And, we like to talk about what's ridiculous. Funny you mentioned the catches. I do think that's a really good point. And that because the lights of the stadium are like a big ring of lights, aren't they? With so much in the dark, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how those lights affect things and drop catches. That could be a huge factor in this game, as we saw in Adelaide, as we saw throughout the Australia series, but particularly with that added factor of the lights. That's going to be just maybe one to watch out on and just see how that affects things. Johnny Bairstow's back for England. That perhaps might take a bit of pressure off Joe Root, do you think? And how likely do you think Rory Burns is to keep his spot with Zach Crawley looking like he's probably fit now?
I think Zach Crawley should come in if he is fit. I always believe, Mel, that nowhere else does karma play such a big role as it does in when you play Test cricket in India. Rory Burns, when you are an overseas batsman on these pitches, you will get low scores. But when you're well set and you throw your wicket the way he did in that first innings of the first Test, that's bad karma. It's going to follow you around. So I think it has. So Zach Crowley, I love the way he played Yasir Shah in completely different conditions, of course, in England. But he would be a shoo-in for me. Johnny Bairstow is the least spoken about Test cricketer in England. It's bizarre to know that he's played nearly 70 Tests, if not more. And he's been around for longer than Joe Root. He was on that 2012 tour. He had already made his debut by then. So this is his third tour of India. He will, again, we heard about Joe Root being the best player in England against spin. Again, there's this talk about Johnny Bairstow suddenly being the best player against spin in England. So it'll be interesting to see. It's going to be a different challenge when you play Ashwin in the form that he is in. Akshar Patel, he could get this ball to swing even, maybe. Rishabh Pant was referring to him as Wasim for a long time. So he could do perhaps a Wasim Akram. So those are good changes for England. That top order has looked shaky. Dan Lawrence hasn't looked the part in Test cricket yet, not in these conditions. And of course, with India, the one thing we do know, apart from the ball being pink, is that Ishant Sharma will be playing his 100th Test match.
Yeah, well, I was about to segue with this really clever segue of how you just mentioned Johnny Bairstow 70 Tests. But of course, it's Ishant Sharma's. You've just ruined the whole thing for me, Bharat. Damn it. Ishant
all that
Sharma,
planning that we do.
All the planning. It seems like a long time ago since he came out to Australia and had that incredible spell against Ricky Ponting that sort of, I guess, really kickstarted his fame and his reputation. And it's kind of been times of ups and downs when they've trusted him and not trusted him. My first memory of watching him live was in the 2014 and 15 tour, which is when we met, when you were out in Australia and in Brisbane. And he was outstanding in Brisbane. And I just feel like since then there were times when he seemed to just completely almost just disappear off the radar, but then he'd come roaring back with that amazing fifer in New Zealand, and he's just someone who keeps coming back and has obviously sported. What the other thing that's my favorite thing about Ishan is the various mullets. He's gone close cropped with the beard now. His style has developed as well, and that's important to me. That's a huge achievement for him. Really, when you look at, he could have fallen away so many times, probably throughout his career.
He's just the 11th fast bowler in Test history to play 100 Tests. That tells you where he sits. And my first memories of Ishant Sharma is I was extremely upset when I saw him, because that's around the time that MS Dhoni had just cut his hair and people had finally stopped comparing my hair. I started growing my hair long before these guys before the world even knew who they were. But anyway, and then, I just gotten over the Dhoni phase, and when Ishant Sharma pops up, and this is when I did not have too much facial hair. So there were a lot of Ishant Sharma comparisons made between, with my hair and just the way I look. So, so my first impression was, there goes my exclusivity again. But it's been a fascinating career. And I said on one of our earlier shows, he's been the most criticized Indian cricketer in the last 10, 12 years. And you look at his record, to an extent, you can understand why. Because I was just checking all the other fast bowlers, great fast bowlers who played 100 tests and where they were after 99 test matches. His record really doesn't stand up to them. Yes, he has picked up over 300 wickets, but even Chaminda was the other subcontinent bowler apart from Kapil Dev and Wasim Akram to have played 100 tests. You see his records like so far ahead or so far much better than Ishant Sharma that you can understand where the criticism has come from. But in the last 5 or 6 years, he's just taken his game to the next level. Another one of my colleagues, Kaushik, has written a beautiful story about him in CricBus, where he's spoken to the strength and conditioning coaches, and Shankar Basu, who's worked a lot with his Indian team, said he's the bowling Virat Kohli. Like, he is more obsessed with fitness than anyone else he's seen except Virat Kohli. So it tells you why he's been able to last for this long, and the fact that he comes back from injury so quickly. And it is a worn down body, but he still keeps doing it, and he's still 32. Maybe he will go past Kapil Dev's 131 tests. Who knows?
That would be amazing. And yeah, I suppose when you think of it, we talked a lot about all these exciting new fast bowlers coming through the ranks in India just in the past few years, and I mean, he remains the godfather of Indian fast bowling, really, in so many ways, I think, for those young fast bowlers. And I imagine a lot of them have sort of looked to him for inspiration, really, because these are players, the young players like Siraj coming through now, who would have just, been watching him when they were quite young, watching him do his thing. He's been doing it for a long time.
Long time. And I think apart from his longevity, he's also stayed relevant. And you hit the nail on the head, because he came onto the scene before this fast bowling revolution in India. So he could easily have been lost in the heap, because he didn't have the greatest of records in his first 40, 50 test matches. But the fact that he kept coming back, and he's played under so many captains, from Anil Kumble to MS Dhoni to now Virat Kohli, and even those guys who Sehwag and all, who captained one test here and there. So it's longevity, of course, but at the same time, he stayed relevant by updating himself, upgrading himself. And like you said, he is the godfather of India's fast bowlers. Jasprit Bumrah kind of shares that title with him, but you can see even Jasprit Bumrah looks up to Ishant Sharma.
Absolutely. So really, when it all boils down to, we know that Ishant Sharma is going to play his 100th test, and we know that there's going to be a match, but we really can't say too much else. And we know that you're going to drop the ball at any possible occasion, as may a lot of players. We'll see. But as far as what's else is going to happen in this test, I don't think you say we won't know what's going to happen until they toss the coin. I don't even know that we're really going to know much about this test, maybe even after 2 or 3 sessions, because we just don't know what the pitch is going to do, what the ball's going to do, all of that kind of stuff. It's exciting. I love it when it's like this, because it's not going to be boring. I think that's one thing that we can be sure of. Now, the only other match that we might mention before we go, there was a match between a T20 match between New Zealand and the Big Bash 11, otherwise known as Australia, over in Christchurch, where Australia got absolutely thumped to the ground. Can we take anything out of that, Bharat? Or is it one of those things where we know that it would be a very different Australian lineup that would end up playing in the T20 World Cup later this year?
2 things I would take away from that. If I was RCB, I would be a little worried, because it was, you called it the Big Bash 11. It could also be the RCB 5 versus New Zealand, because 5 of their foreign players were in the playing 11 for Australia. And the other thing for me is, if I was a player who went for a lot of money in an IPL auction, I wouldn't want to play any match anywhere which is on TV between the auction and the IPL, because my stocks can only drop from that point on. So none of them, even Kyle Jamieson had a very ordinary day, even though New Zealand was so dominant. But yeah, see, ideally, this will Australia's test team would have been in South Africa, and this team would have been the same team. But if not, you would have seen a couple of guys, at least Steve Smith, Pat Cummins, Mitchell Stark, maybe even Josh Hazel would be in New Zealand playing this game. So I don't know how much you can read into it. This is almost like Australia's look at who could make up the numbers 12, 13, 14 in that squad for the World Cup. in what, 6 months' time. And New Zealand were full strength, and it's always good to see New Zealand in full strength. Still 4 matches to go, but again, like, it felt so odd seeing that match after all the amazing Test cricket we've seen. Something about international T20s, like, I don't know, they seem to grow on you, but I still haven't acquired that taste for them.
Yeah, it's different. The bilateral series during a T20 World Cup, it's different, but a bilateral series they often feel added on it. You say that Big Bash 11, other players, New Zealand, it's still at full strength, but I think there also might be some concerns about how more established Australian players were playing, and Aaron Finch's run of form is a real concern. I think he's a real confidence player. I think he's low on confidence at the moment. So Australia will definitely be hoping that he turns that around during this series, because there may not be a huge amount to play before that T20 World Cup. They'll find some, I'm sure. Well, that's it from us. Thanks for joining me, Bharat. We are going to be around throughout this test, and we're going to have a show that will be on. We will be live, but it's going to be later than normal because of those different hours. Yeah. Unless we do it in our pajamas. So keep an eye out on Twitter, keep an eye out for alerts on this channel. And we're looking forward to it, because one thing I'm really sure of is that there is going to be plenty of good, bad, and ridiculous going on in this test match. So we'll see you soon.